So we're live? Okay, great. Okay, I'm calling this special meeting back to order. Again, respectfully acknowledging that this meeting is taking place on the traditional unceded territory of the Stanois
Recording in
First Nation.
progress.
And what a great week in our area as we have the recent news that Stanois has been granted back their land from the ENN. So they will have almost 11 acres where they will be getting it back. So again, I think it's fantastic, and just wanted to acknowledge the region we're in and the recent victory for Stanawas. So at this time, just also acknowledging that we have additional information for this evening's meeting. So we have written public input for item 7A. And this time we'll move on in our agenda to item 6, which is public input periods. I don't know if we have any remotely registered people this evening, so we do not. So we'll move on to items. Sorry, we do? Okay. And so, Miss Dawn, I don't know if you can hear me. Were you wishing to speak and give public input this evening? All right. All right, so we'll just move on in the agenda then. So we're on to item 7A, which is the 2023-2027 financial plan. Oh, she just unmuted. Okay, so I'll read the preamble then. So Ms. Dawn, are you wishing to speak this evening and give public input?
You may have a name confused here.
Okay, I might, but on the screen it says Barb Dawn. So is that Dawn and Barb or Dawn
No,
Barb?
somehow my wife's name has jumped up on the screen. This is
Okay.
Lance Kesselbrock.
Okay, so I'm just going to read the preamble. Just give me a second here. So, persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, and may speak once for up to 2 minutes unless council resolves otherwise, and are limited to providing comment regarding items listed on the agenda for this evening. Comments must be directed to the chair and not to be directed to individual members of council, staff, or the audience, and must not include personnel issues. So, Mr. Gusselbreck, if you again want to state your name and address for the record, and then you have 2 minutes.
Lance Kesselbrock, 7365 Spence's Way. I want to speak to the budget item relative to the fire chief. I want to recount that 6 years ago, after Chief Whips had retired from the force, that we went through a short period of low morale, and we almost lost a significant number of members of the fire department who had offered up their resignation. At that time, Chief Ruckus was hired, brought in, and morale was restored with this department. He has led the department for almost 6 years now, has done an excellent job with it. We have over 30 members in a volunteer fire department that provides an incredible service to this community at a very low price. I feel that bringing the chief on full-time is consistent with every other volunteer fire department on Vancouver Island. I don't see any reason why Lantzville should be any different. I don't see any reason why our safety should be jeopardized in this community. It's important to our community. It's important to his department that works underneath him. He is the leader of it, and I think it's very important to make him a full-time staff member. I think there's budget money to be spent for that. I'm very much aware of the meeting last week where the budget that was several $100,000 over for the village core improvement was being discussed. And that budget was well over. At the end of the vote, it was a split vote, it was approved, and then immediately a $10,000 addition to that project was voted in unanimously without much discussion. So please give careful consideration to the safety of this community and to the morale of our fire department. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any additional speakers this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on in the agenda. So we're on to 7A, which is the 2023-2027 five-year financial plan. So we, under bullet 1, we have the financial plan questions submitted by council and staff, submitted by council and staff responses. Are there any questions from council through to staff? Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, with the mill rates, I've been waiting for an answer then if we can legislatively, if it's permissible to raise the mill rates on forest lands management, managed forest rather, and utilities.
So through to C.O. Campbell, I don't know if there's who of your staff's gonna handle that one.
I believe that Deputy Director Nugent.
Mr. Mayor, through to Councillor Savage. Yes, we will be maximizing.
Yeah, sorry, as a point of privilege, just wondering if you can talk really close to the mic so we can hear you a little better. Thank you.
Is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. The mill rates are dependent on what we set for the residential rate. The forest, managed forest and utilities rate are again dependent on the residential rate. And it's in the form of class multiples. I'm just trying to simplify things here. There are rules around the utilities class multiple. The rate can't be more than $40 per thousand or 2.5 times the business rate. And for forest, I have some inquiries into the province. I don't think there's a max. I'm not being able to find rules according to that. We do have a very small assessed value for the managed forest land, and it's about 1.6 million, I believe. And I think last year, Director Hare used a multiple of about 8, so that would equal 8 times the residential rate. So I can't really give you any actual mill rates until we determine the residential rate.
Okay, I get you. So we'll leave that until the tax rate discussion, which is usually in May.
Well, you can certainly direct us to maximize according to the rules that we do have.
Right.
And I would welcome a motion to that effect.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. And just for example, it says you can go up to a maximum of 40. It's the higher of the two. It's the relation to the business rate.
Yes.
This is for utilities, or up to a maximum of 40, whichever is higher, and the 40 would be higher. So there's an example of, it looks like we could increase that. But if we'll find that out when we do the tax rate approval, how's that?
Well, we'd like some advance notice of what you'd like to do with the tax rates, so we can put them into a bylaw. It takes some amount of work to prepare the schedule and the bylaw. If you can determine what you want to assess the business class at, say a certain percentage increase or leaving it flat, then I can start working on determining the other rates.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion later tonight to increase, if possible, the mill rates for utilities and managed forests to the maximum, and then you can go from there to see if there's any room for increase or not. How's that?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, through to council, anything further with respect to the questions that were submitted by council and the staff responses? All right, and at this point, we'll move on to underneath that, it's just a review of the 5-year financial plan. I don't know if there's any questions through to staff, or if there's any discussion. Okay, hearing, go ahead, Councillor Lerner.
if motions were going to be made, is this the time to do it?
Probably the time to make it unless there's any questions.
Because
Were you making them?
Yeah, I was going to make this next motion, but go ahead if you want to.
no,
Councillor
I
Lerner.
just there was something handed out, so I thought that you.
Oh,
wanted
I
to-
see, yeah, okay.
Okay, Councillor Savage, the floor is
Yeah,
yours.
that District of Lantzville 2023 to 2027 Financial Plan Bylaw number 325, 2023 be given first reading.
Okay, so, oh, you're making that one? All right, so then that's just,
Can I ask a point of privilege?
yeah, go ahead.
We were handed a motion. Is that on the is that being put on the floor, or is first reading being put on the floor?
Well, we can just put the first reading on that.
Okay.
It doesn't mean we can't amend the
Right,
financial
okay.
plan. It's just get first reading.
Right.
Would you prefer I made the motions first?
No, I think it's probably more in order to go ahead with first reading, and then we'll deal with that, and then we'll go to second and third readings,
Yep.
and then that's when you can amend, or even just do second reading.
Do second, yeah.
Yeah.
New to this.
Okay, so do we have a seconder then for first reading, seconded by Councillor Lerner, and there's no discussion, I'll just simply call the question, all those in favor and opposed, it's carried unanimously. Now we're on to the next motion, and again, I would recommend you just do second reading if there's gonna be additional amendments. So Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
I'll make the motion. The District of Lantzville 2023 to 2020 Financial Plan Bylaw number 325, 2023 be given second reading.
Okay, we have it seconded by Councillor Savage, and then for discussion. So this would be the time where you can make amendments if you wish. What do you, okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I first motion that the draft 2023 to 2027 financial plan be amended in count number 1, 5.
So Councillor Savage, I'm just gonna stop you there. I wouldn't call it the draft at this point. Just call it the financial plan, because that's what first reading is based on.
That the 2023 to 2027 financial plan be amended in account number 1520 692, wages regular, by inserting $6,898 for the increase for the fire chief position from 0.8 to 1.0 full-time, and sorry, I better let,
You knew I was coming. Point of order, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and the vote as I'm declaring conflict as my spouse is a member of the fire department.
Didn't even get your motion finished.
I will, I'll redo it. That the 2023 to 2027 financial plan be amended in count number 1520 692, wages regular, by inserting $6,896 for the increase for the fire chief position from 0.8 to 1.0 full-time commencing on September 1st, 2023.
Okay, is there a seconder? So seconded by Councillor Lerner. Discussion on the motion to the mover, and then to.
Yeah, thank you. So this means that the total increase for a full year is $20,902, and that's including benefits. And so therefore, from the end of August, it works out to that amount that I gave. And so just speak to it. In 2021, the fire chief was at 60% full. And first of all, I agree with everything Mr. Gesserblack said earlier about the fire chief. It was well said. So back in 2021, the fire chief was a 50% full-time position, and at no time was the community unsafe or at risk because of this. In 2022, the fire chief was increased to 80% full-time. He was asked if he could go full-time or wanted full-time, but could not due to obligations. At no time was the community unsafe or at risk because of this. Now it happens, now it appears the fire chief is available full-time, which is great, and this motion is to accommodate that fact. In the past 3 years, there was a flurry of staff hirings, which totaled a cost of better part of $650,000, and every year there are staff wage increases. Just this year alone, the automatic staff wage increases have totaled so far around $130,000, which equals 4.3% tax increase. So for 2023, each $30,000 increase is equal to a 1% tax increase. And all this previous spending is what put us in our current tight position. In the past 4 years, there was a compounded tax increase of 68%. For the past 3 years, I've said you can either have big staffing increases or you can have more infrastructure funding, but you can't have both. Yet every budget proposes to continue to having both. So, well, the chickens have now come home to roost. We have to hold the line on the big staff expenses and focus more on infrastructure. The best approach now is to have a steady, measured hand. Reductions in spending are being weighed carefully, every single one, and smart ways to increase income, like increasing the cash amenity contributions from development, increasing DCC rates, will be continually sought. So we don't need to always go for the easy fix of increasing taxes. Now, the fire chief is available full-time. My suggest is we take the same measured, steady approach and work this into the end of August 2023. And it'll be great to have him full-time at that point. We have to make hard financial decisions on many items this year because taxpayers need consideration too. It was only this week we received the total wage and benefits for the fire chief position, and there are automatic built-in wage increases tied to inflation, which is pretty high now. This year, the increase was 6.4%, and will likely be big next year as well. So we have reason to be circumspect. This whole budget process has been about considering all spending and income factors. So the annual increase for full-time at this point I mentioned earlier, and implementing full-time for our great fire chief at the end of August will be this increase of 98,908, I think I said. 6898 for 2023. This is another example of a measured approach. And for the past 5 budgets, council has given the fire department every single thing they have asked for, no exceptions. So this again, I think we're being very accommodating to what's been proposed, what's been suggested, albeit in a measured way. Thank you.
So is there, just through Director Coe's, an issue with the motion itself?
Yes, there
or-
was, but he corrected it. Originally, he stated 6896. Second time, you stated 6898. So as long as I'm sure it's 6898, we're good. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Yes, I thank you. I can support this motion because the way I see this council doing things, I'm quite impressed. We work very hard on being very careful with taxpayer money. And this is something that we are entrusted to manage. We have the obligation to take it seriously. It's very easy to spend other people's money, but it's important to balance everything. And I know that we discussed in the last meeting that there was a public report about the time for a fire chief. And at that time when the report was issued, we were around, I think it was 3,600 population, and the thought was to go to 50% of full-time, which we did. Then the increase to 0.8% happened just a year ago, but we only saw a population increase to about, of the 2021 census to about, I think it was 3,800 and change. So for me, the reason I can support September 1st is because I'm just doing some calculations here. Based on the development permits that have been issued, whether it's for things like Clark Med or in the Harvard area or wherever, I can see us reaching a population in around that time where it might be justifiable. And I think we have to do everything based on logic and calculations and not feeling or fear. So my thought here is that this is a supportable motion. And then my only thing is, and this is through your worship to CAO Campbell, if this motion passes, would it still be the understanding of staff that the general surplus and COVID grant could be used to honor the previous motion of 0% tax increase? Or would staff require us to amend this motion to say, and further that the budget be maintained at 0% tax increase?
Well, I was going to ask that question through to the mover. It was an intent to have that funded out of the general accumulated surplus.
there. I read the wrong motion.
No, I think you read the right motion. It's just you had it attached to the other motion.
Well,
So do you want to make that amendment?
I'll be happy to just make the amendment.
Go ahead, make the amendment.
Okay, I'll just make the amendment then, if that's okay, to say, to add at the end, and further that this cost be funded out of surplus, general surplus for 2023.
Okay. That's a shorter version than what we have. Okay. And we have it, go ahead.
Could you
Director
reread
Coates.
what you said, please?
And further that this cost be funded out of general surplus for 2023.
Okay, and Director Coates?
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned in the first instance that it wasn't just we got the 6898 right, but the form of the motion, you have a motion on the floor to give the bylaw second reading. So this is a motion to amend the motion on the floor. So it would end up being worded that the motion on the floor be amended by adding as amended from the 2023 financial plan being amended in account number, that whole piece. And then now you've got a further amendment to the amendment. So I thought we were
Yeah,
dealing
that's
with one
true.
amendment and then you deal with the other. And I just want to confirm with the deputy director, she's got her hand up of how this is going to work for the bylaw.
Okay. Deputy Director Nugent, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted, excuse me, sorry. I just wanted to add that the additional funding for the fire department, you have a choice. It can come from surplus or it qualifies, it's eligible for the COVID grant funding if you would prefer to use that money. Just putting it out there. And Director Coates, yes, the wording of the motion is I can work with that certainly, if that was your question.
Okay.
Okay, in that case, would it make sense for me to withdraw my amendment and then we vote on the first amendment?
So we'll just withdraw it by unanimous consent of council. So any objections withdrawing that amendment? Okay, hearing none, it's withdrawn.
I'll make the amendment now, please.
Well, hold on, Councillor Savage. We're gonna deal with the motions on the floor, or the amendment on the floor, and then we'll come back and further amend.
Okay.
Okay? All right, so is there anything further? Okay, then I'll move to calling the question then. All those in favor and opposed? Okay, that's carried. So now you're gonna make a further amendment. Go ahead.
And further that the resultant increased tax income be used to reduce the amount of funds transferred from the general accumulated surplus to maintain a 2023 tax increase of 0.
Okay, with respect, Councillor Savage, and it doesn't make, I'm trying to follow that. It doesn't make sense. I think, is that the resultant increase be funded by?
And further, that the resultant increased tax income
But it's not
The-
tax income.
Oh, sorry, I think it's because that's from the other motion you have here that's about
That's
a mill
right.
rate increase, yeah.
So are you gonna,
I'm amending the fire chief motion now, is that?
okay, yeah, that's what you're doing.
All right, and it's at the bottom, this wording, Director Coates, is at the bottom of the other motion. I made a clerical error and put that on the other motion.
Sorry, so the motion on the floor right now is that District of Lantzville 2023 to 2027 Financial Plan Bylaw Number 325, 2023 be given second reading as amended with the 2023, from the 2023 Financial Plan amended in account number 015-20-692, wages regular by inserting 6898 for the increase for the fire chief position from 0.8 to 1.0 full-time commencing on September 1st, 2023. So now the form of the motion you'll be making now is to amend that motion, the motion on the floor, by adding, and then state what you want to add.
All right, it's to amend that motion by adding. And further that, the motion that's on the floor, I move we amend the motion on the floor, and further that, the resultant increased tax income be used to reduce the amount of funds transferred from the general accumulated surplus to maintain a.
Sorry, I've lost you after. Increased tax income be used to.
Yeah.
Could you just repeat
And
that?
and further that the resultant increased tax income be reduced by the same amount of funds transferred from the general accumulated surplus to maintain a 2023 tax increase of 0.
Could you repeat the end part? By the same amount of funds transferred from the,
General accumulated surplus to maintain a 2023 tax increase of 0.
Okay, Councilor Lerner, you're seconding that?
Yes, I'm going to make a one-word amendment, but I'll second it for now.
Go ahead, Councilor Savage, is there anything further, or you wanna-
No, sorry for the mix-up there. It was, I didn't have it written properly. So anyway, that's basically, we're simply maintaining our 0 tax increase by paying for this increase out of the general accumulated surplus. Simple as that. Thank you.
Sorry, I don't know how to procedurally do this, but it currently, the way I read the motion, it says the resultant tax income be used to reduce the amount of funds. But I think what it should say, and maybe by unanimous consent with the mover, it should say the resultant tax cost, because it's the fire chief motion and
Yeah,
increase the
perhaps you
cost.
could get Director Coates to reread it. I corrected that when I was
Oh,
saying.
okay, sorry.
So I'm gonna jump in here real quick, because I think what's happened here is, through to Councilor Savage, is with the motion that you handed out earlier, this is based on whether or not the mill rate for the utilities and for the managed force goes up, and whatever the difference is. Is that what you're after? No? Okay, well, so what is, okay, so. Okay, all right. Director Coates.
maybe I could get some guidance from the deputy director on whether it's increased tax income or increased tax expense. I'm just not sure what. Do you
I'd
want me
like
to
to-
just read what we have? Like I can. So right now, I've got to amend the motion on the floor by adding and further that the resultant increase tax income be reduced by the same amount of funds transferred from the general accumulated surplus to maintain a 2023 tax increase of 0.
Or instead of income, we could put tax requisition.
Sorry, through your worship.
Yeah, I think just through the council, I think we just abandon this amendment and just come up with a new amendment that basically just speaks directly to increasing the funding for the fire chief position from general, or it could be from the COVID restart fund, or it could be from general surplus.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I don't think we had it. We had it seconded though.
No, because I was.
Or no, I think no, we did. Yeah,
Did we?
and then you were gonna.
Oh, yeah, I was
make
gonna
one
amend
word.
it, you're right.
So through the council by unanimous consent to withdraw the amendment on the floor. Any objections? Okay, hearing none, that's withdrawn. So that the motion on the floor be further amended by funding. Oh, sorry, well, maybe you can just do it, Director Coates.
I think there was a good start previously by adding, and further that this additional cost be funded out of, and then council just needs to say, is it going to be funded out of
Yeah,
general?
well, so out of the COVID restart fund, we'll just switch it to that. And then if we get a seconder, I'll speak to that. Okay, seconded by Councillor Lerner. And that's all we need, just be funded out of the COVID restart. Good?
Defer to Deputy
Yeah,
Director.
Deputy Director Nugent, does that work? Give enough direction?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, keeping it simple is good.
Okay, all right. So I'll speak to the motion real briefly. I like the idea of using the COVID restart funds because that is more restrictive than our general operating surplus, general surplus. Because later on the agenda, we are going to be amending that so we can also include that for operational expenses in addition to capital expenses. So anyways, I think there's the COVID restart funds have a little bit more, rules around them. So through to Councillor Lerner, and then we'll go to the rest of the council.
No, I support using the COVID restart funds to keep this at 0%. I'm very proud of what this council has accomplished, going to 0%. And so I supported the increase to the fire chief position, and now I support using the COVID grant for the fire chief position for 2023 to be at 0%. So, thank you.
Councillor Savage, since we hijacked.
Yes,
the amendment.
no, it's wonderful. So the only reason I had general surplus, I didn't want to find out there'd be a problem with the COVID grant later, that's all. But there shouldn't be, because it says in the provincial website guidelines for what this COVID restart grant can be used for, it lists protective services like fire protection and police. So I think it shouldn't be a problem at all. And at the start, it also says eligible costs will include addressing revenue shortfalls. So there you go. It would cover it that way too. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Jones.
Yes, I support the amendment, and I had a couple of comments on the original motion. Is it too late to speak to
No, I
that?
think you can go ahead because just the way these are going, I think that's fine.
Why not mix things up a little bit? Thank you to Councillors Lerner and Savage for your comments, particularly noting that the fire chief position has increased from 50% up to 80% since 2021, and that we have not been, to our knowledge, experiencing safety concerns. That is certainly very reassuring. I just wanted to note some things that I have heard from residents. One of them is just some concern and frustration that in going to full-time, we are not getting 5 days a week, which would be very common, even expected for a full-time position. It will remain at the 4 days a week. That was one concern from wanted to put that out there along with some other statistics. We've heard a lot of statistics, and sometimes we're comparing apples to apples, and sometimes it's apples to oranges. It is hard to look at them, but this is another one that has been brought to light, which is the number of call-outs in a year. And if we compare Lantzville with a few communities that are larger, but only slightly larger, Beauhorn, Bay, Dashwood, Coombs, Bowen Island are all just a little bit larger, and they all have, the call-outs for Lantzville is considerably lower than all of those communities. And that is a bit of a marker, and to some extent, to what our needs are within the fire department. I also just wanted to note that as a counselor, I feel very proud of the job this council has done supporting the fire department. We have increased the budget for educational training, for equipment, for expenses like turnout gear, for clothing, cleaning, for firefighting supplies, first responder supplies, and for training, as well as approving the purchase of a new fire truck. So I would just like the community to realize that this council has really been fully supportive of this fire department, and we're very proud to have that position. Thank you.
Guess I'll just speak to it a little bit more as well. And I thank council for bringing this forward. As you know, I was planning on bringing it forward regardless, but again, I just think it just shows the compromises council's willing to make to move this forward, knowing that it is a necessary increase. And I think it goes back to the Paul Murray report and the time in which that report was written. And it was written in a time where there was a changing in the department requirements for training. And at that point, and I don't have my notes in front of me, but anyways, I'm just kind of winging it. But at that point, you know, it was kind of the fire standard, sorry, well, not fire standards. And the requirements were, as long as the department could demonstrate that they're meeting the requirements, they didn't have to go and obtain certifications and so on. Well, now things have changed. Now there is a fire standard set that all the departments have to follow, and they all have to be in line. And I think it's in 2023 or 2024. All the fire departments have to be in line, and they have to have the certifications for fighting fire and so forth. And maybe through to Chief Rukas, is that correct? I can't remember if it's 20. I don't have my notes, but it's either 2023 or 2024 where it's a requirement.
Through the chair to council, that's correct. The Office of the Fire Commissioner has come out with a minimum training standards in British Columbia. I believe it's one of the only provinces in Canada that's done it, where there is a set standard that has to be met by the fire department. Some of it can be done in-house, but a big chunk of it, for liability reasons, does need to go outside of our training.
Well, and it's the certifications, and it's the certification requirement as of this year or next year?
We have to, by March of 2024, declare how we're
that's what
going
I
to meet that requirement.
Yeah. So, you know, the point I'm driving at here is the training requirements have gone up. It's not a myth. It's a reality. And I think our department's done an excellent job of being ahead of the curve on this, as I think pretty much everybody, except for the new recruits, are all certified. So that's a testament to the work that's already being done. And, you know, something obviously the fire department is very proud of, and you know, and I can totally keep supporting that. And this is one of the steps. You know, it's known that the training requirements and reporting requirements have all gone up, and it's just the reality that fire departments have to deal with. And part of that is having the person hours to fulfill those requirements. So I think again, this is I see this as a bit more of a compromise. Maybe it's not starting right away, but it's starting soon enough, and there's a commitment from this council and from the community to move this forward into a full-time position. So with that being said, I don't know if there's anything further from council. Okay, hearing none, I will move to calling the question on the amendment to the financial plan. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. We'll need, I'm actually getting it right, Councillor Mundell back. Oh, usually I blow.
So now you're on second reading as amended?
Yeah, second reading is amended, as amended. I wanted to make a further amendment. And I really, I'm not up for all the wordiness of it, but, so to further amend, the 2023 to 2027 financial plan by increasing the asset management contributions from 650,000 to 740,000. It's just under the capital and operating reserves page on page 22 of the agenda. Oh, my mistake, I jumped a line. Okay, we haven't, so sorry, it should be 770,000.
From 650 to 770?
No, it'd be the 2023 contribution, so it'd be, instead of 680, it would be 770.
I see, yeah.
So it's an increase of 90,000. And through to Deputy Director,
Sorry, I didn't get that at all. So that the motion on the floor be amended by adding in further that as
The
amended in the
asset management.
2023 financial plan, or 2023 to 2027 financial plan as amended.
in the asset replacement infrastructure. General, in the reserve,
And the asset management replacement,
yeah, drainage and transportation infrastructure.
sorry, did you say drainage?
Well, it's drainage and transportation infrastructure is one category.
I don't have it. In the asset replacement, management replacement, comma, drainage and transportation
It would be reserve fund,
reserve fund,
be increased by an additional 90,000. Why don't we just do that?
increased by an additional 90,000.
90,000, yeah. For a grand total of 770,000.
For a grand total of 790,000,
70,
770,000,
yeah.
funded from,
Taxation. Then popular motion of the night. Is that, you've got it? And then through to,
I think I have, but I think Deputy, I think we're getting into some complex things here that you may be able to vote on the second reading, but we'll certainly have to bring you back something in writing for the third reading, unless,
so yeah, through to Deputy Director Nugent. Do you understand what I'm trying to do? It's just increase that reserve contribution by 90,000 or approximately 3% tax increase.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, you want to take, or yes, you want to increase the tax levy by 90,000 and put that increase into the asset replacement drainage and transportation infrastructure reserve.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think we got it. Yeah, so again, this is a pretty unpopular motion to make, considering we've brought our tax increase down to 0 through various methods and so forth. But this is just one of these, I think, necessary things we need to seriously turn our minds to in terms of having some form of taxation moving from year to year. Otherwise, we will fall further and further behind. You know, it hasn't been proven to me otherwise that won't be falling behind by not doing this. So again, I think having this 3% tax increase after we've done such a good job of trimming everywhere else is in order. You know, again, we know there's a definite funding gap in our infrastructure and especially in roads, and it's important to make sure that we are adequately funding our asset management or our asset management is properly funded. So I don't think there's much more to say, except for this doesn't do enough necessarily to close the gap, but at least we're moving in the right direction, and it is a 3% tax increase. And in terms of the overall impact to the average house, I don't know what it will look like in an actual dollar amount on $1 million house per se, but you know, I'm not going to say cups of coffee or loaves of bread or anything because, you know, in terms of spending other people's money, obviously I do take that quite seriously, but I think we'll pay more down the road. And again, we have to look to next year that some of these things we've done this year will catch up to us. So we have to have some increase, in my opinion. And what a better place to put it is right into something that's tangible, that's into our assets. It's into our making sure we have enough money in our roads because we know we're falling further and further behind. I don't know the exact numbers. I think the numbers in the urban systems reports are probably outdated now, considering the report was 2018. But again, I'm not an expert in that, but you know, from everything I've seen and over the last even 6 months, the Dickinson Road replacement has gone from a budget of around maybe 2 million now to 4 million. So these are the realities we're facing, and we can't continue to underfund our asset management. So it's a small increase, in my opinion, but it's necessary. So through to Councillor Savage and then.
Yes, now I will not be supporting this, Mayor Swain, but the good news is you can have your cake and eat it too. Now, in our general accumulated surplus reserve or fund, right in the bylaw for that, it says that it is up to council to approve any excess over $1 million to put into any reserve of their choice. Now, we haven't done this yet that I can recall at all last term, unless it was done for us and we approved it in the budget. But if this is correct, we're going to be getting our general accumulated surplus number at some point, I believe, before the budget final approval in May. And even if not, it's unrelated to the budget. At any time we get that total, Mayor Swain, anything above $1 million, and if it's true, if it's at around 1,387,000 now, there will be a good 1,300,000 left, if that figure's accurate. And at any time, once we get that confirmed, we as council can put all those funds, 300,000, whatever we like, into any reserve fund that we choose. And if it's roads, there you go. We can easily put that. If you're wanting to put 90 in now, we could up that to 100,000 and easily put that in. And I'll be speaking to that, not at this motion, but just at my end talk, which I do every budget. I'll be talking at length about the reality of infrastructure and where the real shortfall is, which is not 400,000 a year at this point. So the second reason I won't be supporting it is because we worked so hard to make that statement of the 0% tax increase. And that's for the benefit of residents, that we really are taking this seriously as scrupulous money managers. And the third reason is I want to spend this entire year restructuring our approach to financing, be it the planning department, whatever, and it's to increase income, reduce expenses. And until we get that done, I don't feel that I want to dive into a, this at this point. But as I say, you can have your cake and eat it too. So that's how I would go about it. So I won't be supporting it, but I certainly support the principle that that's my goal this year to put more focus on the infrastructure. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lerner, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, unfortunately, I cannot support the motion. What I've heard from residents was that they were thrilled with the 0% because they had had a nearly 70% accumulated increase over the last few years, and they just can't afford anymore. So I do agree that we need to care for our infrastructure reserves. I can't find anywhere in the budget where we reduced or did not approve a major infrastructure item on the budget, nor do I see anywhere where we reduced or did not approve a contribution to reserves that was recommended. I do agree with Councillor Savage that we would potentially, if we have a 1.3 or 1.4 million dollar general surplus, our agenda shows that in order to make this budget 0%, we're only taking $42,600 from general surplus. So let's assume there's 1.2 or 1.3 million left. We could easily throw 200,000, not 90, but 200,000 into that infrastructure reserve from the what I would consider overtaxation that happened in the past. If I just believe that residents deserve a break this time, and certainly I would support taking money out of that surplus into the infrastructure reserve mentioned, and I would support potentially next year increasing our contributions as well. Thank you.
Councillor Mundell.
Yes, thank you for proposing this, Mayor Swain. I am very much in support of it. As you mentioned, we can't keep kicking these items down the road. And literally, the road is basically falling apart underneath us. So we need to be addressing our infrastructure issues right away. Yes, as Councillor Savage mentioned, we can be taking money from the general accumulated surplus to be putting towards these reserves, as we should, but also we should be considering the tax, mild moderate tax increase to be putting into these reserves as well. Now, people are tossing numbers around like 200,000, 300,000. We can do that. We can move that money around. I wish Director Spears were here because I would like to ask him. Oh, there. Maybe he can fill me in then. How much of a piece of road $200,000 would cover this day and age? I would suspect it'd be very little. Maybe a patch, maybe 200-300 meters of road would $200,000 to $300,000. So we need huge reserves to be covering the cost of even one roadway getting replaced. And I think we're digging ourselves into a significant hole if we don't get these reserves to a point where they are up above millions of dollars. Because let's face it, look at the Dickinson project. That is going to cost us a ton of money. And without that built up, we will not be able to repair any other infrastructure. And that's just factoring only in roads. There are other infrastructure changes and upgrades that we need in this community. So I think 90,000 here, and we keep adding into those reserves is prudent. It's needed. And we're going to get ourselves into a situation where we're all going to be paying for road repairs and vehicle repairs because the roads are literally crumbling underneath our vehicles. So I think we're going to be paying one way or another. What I heard from residents, I know Councillor Lerner might have heard that people were pleased with the 0%. I heard the opposite. I got messages loud and clear saying that it wasn't financially smart to be making decisions around a 0% tax increase. And just because infrastructure projects aren't on the list, aren't on this capital list, doesn't mean they don't exist. They're there. Again, if we went to Director Spears, I bet you he could probably list a whole handful, maybe 2 handfuls of projects that need to be done in this community. So I think, again, I don't support the 0%. I am in favor of what Mayor Swain is suggesting. During my election, I said I'm against massive tax increases, and I still stand by that. I'm against massive tax increases, and I feel like we are getting ourselves into a position where that's where we're headed for if we don't slowly, moderately, mildly increase at a slow rate to keep up with these inflationary costs. Thank you.
Okay, first time speakers, and then we'll go around the horn again. Councillor Jones.
Gee, it wasn't very long ago that we had this wonderful photo taken outside of Municipal Hall with a check for $1.910 million. And what is it to be used for? Infrastructure. So we're doing pretty well this year for infrastructure funding. Grateful for that. I just want to reiterate the point that as the operating budget has increased over the last 4 years or so, the increases have been huge on the side of staff wages and benefits. And you can't make those large increases and also tend to fixing your infrastructure problems. And this council, I think, is very aware of that. And as we need a year to not just tighten the belt, but to reprioritize expenditures here. And at the end of that time period, I fully expect that we will be having some sizable contributions to the infrastructure reserves. And certainly they are needed. I'm not arguing with that. This council has approved every infrastructure request that I could find already this year. A new fire truck, a new lawnmower. Actually, sorry, we didn't approve the paint sprayer. But a fire truck, a new lawnmower, and all of the infrastructure expenses that have come our way have also been approved. So I think we're on a good track with solving some of the infrastructure needs. And we'll also note that we hope that we will be seeing some more development in Lantzville. In certain areas, the Foothills is already on the go, and some sizable cash amenities will be coming from that, and they certainly should be directed more towards the infrastructure than the other side of our operations budget. So I think we're doing well. You probably figured out to not support the motion. So there we go. That's all I have to say.
Okay, I'll speak to it a second time, and hopefully I won't be too repetitive on some of this stuff. You know, looking at where we came from last year to this year, all we added was $30,000 to this one particular reserve. Not a lot. 30,000. Now, when I look at this would be page one of 2. This is of the sheets that have our capital budget summary. This year we're slated to spend 2.4 million on Dickinson, and then followed by 1.8 million next year. Now, we have mention of this, yes, this wonderful, 1.9 million that's fallen out of the sky. It's a one-shot, injection to our infrastructure. But when we look at our infrastructure as a whole, it barely puts a dent in it. And that's the reality. So, if we don't do 90,000 this year, we're just going to keep falling behind. Because if you look on page 22, in each year that goes by, it gradually steps up. But in my opinion, how it gradually steps up in the contributions is pretty weak. It needs to have a steeper rise, and if we're going to be serious about our even getting close to the road replacements. I joked about Forest Turn Way, one of our previous meetings, but it really is no joke. It's a horrible road, and a lot of our roads are headed in that same direction. And the way we're funding our asset management is not going to suffice. And I can't tell you exactly what dollar figure that is, but I think on a whole, it's pretty safe to say, and I don't want to drag staff into the debate on this, but I'm sure that they would agree. And in terms of our general operating or general surplus fund, yeah, sure, we can take 200 grand out of that, but that's a one-time thing. That's for helping out with maybe special projects or the shortcomings of what's currently in our funds for various infrastructure. So 200 grand, you take it out, it's going to take a while for that to grow back. Over 3 years at 90,000, there you go, do the math, 270,000, just like that. And that's not even factoring, stepping it up even more on top of that each year. We got some serious catch up to do, so we can put it off a year, but then next year I'll be asking for 180,000 or 200,000, not 90,000, but it'll be a lot more. We can't keep kicking this down the road. One of my roles as mayor is to, bring forward motions that is for the betterment of the community, and this is one of these times where I'm bringing a motion forward that is for the betterment of our community. I don't do it often, but this is one of those times where I think we cannot turn a blind eye to it. So I'll leave my comments to that. I'm not going to further debate this or be repetitive, but again, 3% is in my opinion, would be a responsible level of taxation even for this year. Councillor Lerner.
Thank you. I do take those points. They're important ones. But looking through the page 22, the particular fund in question, I do see that, yes, the contributions increased from 650 to 680 as currently written, then to 714, 754, 799, 849 for the end of the 2027, as it is a 5-year plan. And the Dickinson Road work does take us into a deficit in that particular fund, although our total assets in the reserves still appear to be in a surplus. But by the end of our financial plan of 2027, the fund is back to a standing rate amount of almost 250,000 according to the current plan, and that's without any changes. And that includes in the other pullout on page 20 and 21 of our agenda. It includes the village core revitalization that we just approved, potentially multi-use path for Lantzville Road that was also discussed, Lorenzen Lane, the 2 Dickinson Road phases, East Wind Drive, and another Lorenzen Lane thing, an Alger Road asphalt replacement, and that's all included, and we still end up with a potential surplus at the end of 2027 in that particular fund, with just the steady increases that are currently in there. That being said, I would in the future consider expanding those increases. I'm not sure about 180,000, but instead of maybe 714, it could be 750, 775, 800. But at this time, I just can't support it, although I do appreciate the good nature of the motion. So I will leave it at that for now. Thank you.
I will be making a follow-up question through the staff, but go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Yes, thank you. You got to hear the real story on infrastructure before you go any further here. So this is the story on our infrastructure funding, capital reserve funding, asset management funding, as it's called, being called different names. Much is being made of a funding shortfall of about $400,000 for funding our infrastructure reserve. This is an arbitrary figure, and here's why. The big infrastructure expense is for replacing roads. When we inherited the responsibility of roads from highways, and when we assumed the roads, they weren't in the best shape even then. So there's about 90 roads in Lantzville that are not strata, and that excludes the new foothill roads. Of these 90 roads, some have already been repaved. Some are short roads, some long. So let's say 50 of them need replacing right now. Well, Sebastian Road cost over 900,000 to replace and put in new pipes. Dickinson Road has an estimate of around 3.5 million to replace. So if we take 50 roads, which now need replacing, and an average of $1 million a road, that's $50 million we need now. That's our shortfall, not 400,000 a year. That's why I'm saying it's an arbitrary figure. So are you telling me we're going to go out and somehow get $50 million now and don't know what kind of a tax increase that is? So my point being, that's our reality. We inherited these old roads. So the question is, how fast do we replace these roads and things like the asbestos water pipes? That's the real question, and that's a political question. That's a council decision each year, and it will be depending on that year how well we're doing with income versus expenses. And my plan this year is to get us in far better shape with that. So my answer is we reduce spending and increase income, and every year then we must determine how much we put into the road fund. But it's a big march, and we better get used to the fact it's going to be a long process. We're not going to be spending 50 million in 5 years, or whatever the figure is, 40 million, 60 million, 30 million. There's a ton of them that need replacing now or could use being replaced. But what we don't do is have big tax increases every year. That's easy, but it's unsustainable for residents who aren't an endless cash machine, so especially seniors on a fixed income. And we also have other needs besides road replacement. We have to balance those with. So luckily, we're in a good opportunity now. In this time of new development, we have to hold the line on spending so all the extra new development tax income can add up to put towards this infrastructure of roads, new pipes and buildings and so on. That's for me how to do it. And I have all sorts of ideas I want to do this year, how to create a good income and hold the line on expenses. And we've also got more DCCs coming up. We got to factor those in as well. We can raise the cash amenity contributions from new development specifically for infrastructure. So I think that's the best way forward. So I think we're just going to have to get used to these road replacements. It's going to be a very long process. We do the worst ones first, but even our worst roads still work when you drive the speed limit. It's just, I guess you could call it the character of Lantzville. So it'll be slow go on the fancy roads. I'm just trying to get some reality in here. And there is no magic number of spending. It's going to be each year we do our best and steadily work away at it. So every budget's a new budget, I believe. So that's, I think, the reality of our infrastructure. So, and as I say, the surplus right in the bylaw, it says that's what it's for, if we so choose to put it into any reserve we want. We've yet to get our new DCC proposal back. We passed that motion last summer to start work on our new DCCs. They're about 20% behind, apparently. So there's a lot of income towards roads from that. So anyway, that's by way of saying I think we're fine for this year. And after we restructure our finances, we can come up with a different figure each year. So thank you.
Through to, I guess, the CO Campbell or through to Director Spears, just with respect to the reference made to December 2027 or to 2027 with respect to the Asset replacement for drainage, transportation infrastructure, it does show being at 248,000, but, my understanding all the way along and my time on council thus far is, even though we may have maybe in the black at that point, doesn't seem like we probably will really be, in the black, just knowing that, the expense that, the unforeseen expense, even with Dickinson going from 2 million to 4 million. Nobody saw that one coming, but it's happening. So I just don't really see, like, are these other projects that are listed for 2025, 2026 and 2020 or 2027, are those numbers really that realistic, or are we gonna see further inflation on those?
Through your worship to council, yeah, guaranteed to see more inflation onto those numbers for sure. Within a month, we're seeing increases in paving costs. And I think someone earlier alluded to the cost of paving, and basically 1 meter of a 6 meter wide road is about $1,400. That's just the pavement itself. That doesn't count for any underlying issues if you have to dig in and do some of the base. So it's not cheap, and it's not getting cheaper. It is one of those cases, the longer you look at it, the more it's going to cost in the long run. Just a quick note, over the last 20 years, basically, the director's position on the roads management plan that was put in place in 2005, it was never intended to actually have a huge tax burden. It looked ahead and looked at, what the tax increase would be over the years. And it was identified that, only certain things can be done. So portions of roads were split up and looked at in those kind of cases where, say, Alls Road or Dickinson Road, for example, it was looked at. We could do 200 meters this year, 200 meters next year, and just keep it going like that. And that was a 48-year plan. So when it comes to asphalt, they recommend you change it every 25 years, or the base ends up becoming an issue. So as far as getting caught up, I don't think that's ever going to happen. As Councillor Savage alluded to, we were given the roads in such a state that it would take, right now I believe it's like $79 million to upgrade the roads to get them to where they should be. So I'll leave it at that.
All right, thank you. All right, through the council, Councillor Mundell, go ahead.
Yeah, and just in follow-up to a few of Councillor Savage comments, I understand the rationale that we are way behind, and just as Director Spears mentioned that, we're never going to get to that 79 million. However, if we don't start putting away money now into these reserves, we are going to be even further behind. A small number as it may seem, at least it's moving the dial. It's moving us upwards towards something. If we stay at zero, we're pulling these surplus numbers that, again, will not, as Mayor Swain, may not be there next year. So, and my question would be, okay, well, we end up possibly, very unlikely, in the black in 2027, but possibly in the black in the 200,000 range. But what's 200,000 going to get us in 2027? Probably half a meter of road. I think we need to be looking further ahead, further out, and planning accordingly. And I don't think that a budget of 0% is going to get us there without, again, having to make a massive hike at some point, and no one's going to be thrilled with that. So I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Well, I certainly don't dispute that surfaces need to be replaced, but when we take a look at the cost of Sebastian Road, we should certainly be cognizant of the fact that a lot of the money that went into that road went into pipes under the ground into stormwater management and other services that were needed. And with Dickinson, we're in the same situation. Now, if we want to put in all of this gray infrastructure, yes, we are going to be having a huge expense to every single road that we do. We need to be more forward-thinking and creative here. People have been very vocal that they are not keen to see untreated stormwater being piped to the beach. And inevitably, this may be where we're at, that some is, but by no means all. And we've got to start looking at other solutions, whether they be ones that are working now that can continue to work, the ditch and culvert system, or whether we build water retention ponds and just insist that developers stick to our official community plan, which says no additional water runoff leaves the site. No additional water runoff from pre-development can leave the site. So I think we have some progressive measures that we can take as we reprioritize the way we upgrade our roads and surrounding related infrastructure here. And then the picture doesn't look quite as nightmarish as the $79 million figure suggests. Thank you.
Councillor Lerner?
Thank you. Well, I do have a lottery ticket, so if I win, I promise I can pave a road if I win the $50 million. But just to look at the contributions, I know 0% sounds like nothing's being contributed, but 0% is just not increasing taxes for certain other things. Our contributions, if you add up operating reserve contribution, asset replacement equipment and vehicle contribution, I'm talking about for this year alone, asset replacement drainage and transportation infrastructure contribution, asset replacement facilities reserve contribution, parks and property acquisition contribution, it totals $1,099,800 contributed to reserves in this budget. And that's estimating $0 in contributions from community asset contributions. Community amenity contributions, sorry. Where last year it was 187,000 we actually received, and to be on the safe side, we've estimated 0 this year. So that's $1.1 million just to those reserves that is being contributed. So we're not contributing 0. It's just that we're not raising it at a super high pace. So I'm still comfortable maintaining what's in the budget of $1.1 million to reserves. And yes, there will be some drains on those. Most of those reserves are, everything except the reserve in question actually is estimated to end the year with a surplus. So I'm perfectly comfortable with where we're at. And I do acknowledge that we are $79 million behind in total road repaving. And again, I promise if I win $50 million, I will pave a road. Thank you.
Okay, unless there's anything further, I'm going to call the question. Holding true to my promise. All right, all those in favor, noting Mayor Swain's in favor, Councillor Mundell's in favor and opposed, and noting Councillor Lerner, Councillor Jones, and Councillor Savage opposed, that fails.
A noble try.
Go ahead, Councillor Savage.
Thank you. I have another amendment, please, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
Then I handed that to Director Coates there earlier, that the 2023 tax rates be amended by increasing the mill rate for utilities to the
So
maximum.
Councillor Savage, I'm just going to interrupt, is in terms of the motion,
Yeah, that would be
separate.
separate. You're on the financial plan, the tax rates.
So this would be a follow-up.
It's a
motion.
follow-up. It's nothing to do with your financial plan.
Okay,
It
so you
flows from your financial plan.
prefer I do this at the next council meeting then?
Or
No, you can
or
do
you
it
can do it
afterwards.
tonight
Yeah.
to give direction, but it's, it's not a part, it's not an amendment to the financial.
No,
plan.
that's why I didn't express it that way.
Yeah,
Yep, so
but
that,
the financial plan is what's on the floor, right? Have I lost track totally?
oh, I
Yeah,
see, I
financial
get
plan's
your
on the
point.
floor,
Yeah,
yeah,
thank you for
that's
that.
right.
You're
Thank
right.
you.
It's on the floor, so let's,
Okay.
let's pass third reading and then I can make this motion.
Sure, is there any
Yep, thank
further
you.
amendments to second reading? We're on second reading. Any further amendments to second reading? Okay. So I'm gonna call a question on the second reading as amended. So all those in favor and opposed, that's carried, or you're opposed? Yeah. As amended, yeah, with the amendments that we've just come passed. So that's what we're voting on. We're voting on second reading as amended. So up to this point, we've just been voting on amendments, correct? Yeah. All right. All right, so I'm gonna call the question again on second reading as amended. All those in favor and opposed, and noting Councilor Wendell's opposed, it carries. All right, so now we're on to third reading. Is someone prepared to make third reading as amended? Or do we need it back? Has
I
has there
defer
been any
to
substantial
Deputy
changes?
Director Nugent on that. Are you satisfied that it's sufficiently clear? Or did you want to prepare the bylaw and bring it back for third at a separate meeting?
I'm going to have to change the Schedule A to the bylaw slightly for the funding for the fire department with the COVID restart funds. Because that changes the numbers slightly on Schedule A, and that's part of the bylaw.
Probably cleaner if we bring you the updated one as that second
Okay,
reading.
so we'll just
For
leave it
third
as.
reading next week.
Sure, so we'll just leave it as that then. Okay. All right, so Councilor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. That the 2023 tax rates be amended by increasing the mill rate for utilities to the maximum possible and increasing the mill rate for managed forests to the maximum possible.
Okay, is there a seconder to that? Second by Councilor Lerner. For discussion, go ahead, Councilor Savage.
Yeah, this is just one of those things. We're looking for ways to increase income, and we'll leave it up to Deputy Director Nugent to see what the maximum could be. I've got a pretty good idea now, but let's see what comes out, and she'll present this in time for us to amend the tax rates when they come before us. And once again, it'll just be a little extra income, which is the theme of this year for me. More income, lower expenses. Thank you.
Councilor Lerner, if you wish.
No, nothing to add, thank you.
Okay, anything further from council? Okay, hearing nothing, I will call the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. All right, so now we're on to bylaw number 340. Okay, so I'll just make the motion that the District of Lantzville accumulated general operating surplus reserve fund bylaw number 215, 2019 amendment in open bracket annual budget close bracket bylaw number 340, 2023 be given first reading. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Savage. I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. Takes us on to the next one, that the District of Lantzville accumulated general operating surplus reserve fund bylaw number 215, 2019 amendment, open bracket, annual budget, close bracket bylaw number 340, 2023, be given second and third readings. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Lerner. Discussion. Not much really to add from what I probably said last time about bringing this forward. So it just gives us more flexibility and using the accumulated general surplus fund, so we can include operating as well as capital expenditures. So to the seconder
Nothing to add.
and through the rest of the council, anything further? Okay, I will move to calling the question. All those in favor and opposed, that's carried unanimously. That takes us on to the next item, which is public clarifications. Persons recognized by the chair to speak must first state their name and address for the record, and the agenda item for which they are seeking a clarification. and may speak once up to 2 minutes to ask clarification questions regarding how did the vote go, any technicalities, requesting of interpretation of abbreviations or jargon use. So is anybody seeking clarification? Okay, at this point, I'll make a motion to close.
I just wanted to report that in my mail that I just went through, because I was out of the office the last 2 days, there was a letter from Lynn and Bill Reeve, and it was regarding tonight's meeting. However, it was misaddressed to me rather than to District at Lantzville. It was giving comment on the financial plan and providing some recommendations. We sent that on to council now, and of course, you'll have it before you consider third reading.
Okay, thank you. All right, so at this point, I'm just gonna make that motion to close the meeting pursuant to sections 91 A, C, I, and K of the Community Charter. Is there a seconder? Second by Councilor Lerner. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried unanimously. The meeting is now closed. We'll just wait for the gallery to clear.
Recording stopped.